Hello and good morning, Rotary Club. My name is Taylor Dean, and I'm head of this year's 2011 Government Reform Group Committee for Term Limits. Now, I'm going to ask you a simple question, and most of you probably won't know the answer. Do you know how much each individual in this club is in debt? Alright, probably none of you. Well, add $47,980.67 that Congress has spent on excess taxes to each individual in this room and the United States. Politics is big business, very big business. In fact, it's one of the biggest businesses in the United States, with revenues exceeding $2 trillion. This explosion of debt, yours and mine debt, and the accumulation of $14 trillion of it has become a problem, and we must address it on several fronts if we wish to solve the issue. This issue is that there's a lack of term limits in congressmen and senators. These public servants get to serve a lifetime just to keep their jobs rather than to solve problems. If we were to limit them to 8 years, much like our presidency, then they would focus on the problem, not just becoming re-elected. In order to do this, we must introduce a new constitutional amendment. Now that I have y'all focusing on this issue, let's continue with its importance. The problem is that $2 trillion of our tax dollars are being spent by our 100 senators and 435 congressmen alone. They stay in power so long that they start acting like the money is theirs rather than ours as well. By not having limits, they get to stay in office indefinitely. According to the National Debt Clock, as of October 30th, 2011, our government owes banks, foreign countries, and individuals over $14 trillion. I know this is a serious problem because I've seen with my own eyes on the national organization's website that this number increased from $14 trillion to $15 trillion over the past month. Therefore, now each individual in this room owes $48,232. I know this number is so large to put into perspective, the $15 trillion I'm talking about, but think about the $48,232 that I've just mentioned. There are 300 million citizens, and 535 of them get to decide how we spend our money. Having this burden is hard for our economy to grow. If this continues like this, then our debt will continue to rise instead of shrink, and we will not be able to pay our bills and solve other important issues. Now that I hope you're starting to realize this problem, I'll explain to you some solution methods. In order to stop the continuation of debt, we must set term limits for our congressmen to be re-elected for office. According to Vince Lynn in the 1997 book Term Limits, he says that this will work much like the presidency. He says that it will make way for fresh candidates and encourage participation. Basically, he means this will encourage citizens not to just, who normally wouldn't run, to do so. Also, according to Bill French in Term Limits for Congress on Academic Search Premier, and the date was unlisted, he says that it will stop politicians making decisions solely to prolong their career. He said if they knew the amount of time that they had to serve as congressmen, then they would act self-servingly rather than career legislators. Also, it would reduce the advantage gained by representative seniority. The longer a congressman serves, the more responsibility he has, no matter the number of voters. And also, it will ensure that each district is represented by the same and similar seniority. Now, I know a lot of people would argue against these solutions. In fact, according to Jay Green on Academic Search Premier in the 1995 book Term Limits, a Measure Against Our Ignorance, he says that it's undemocratic and it will lack in a result of experienced politicians. Well, by undemocratic, he means that if we set term limits, it'll take away from people's choice to choose a representative that they would like. And if it does that, then it's undemocratic to prevent them in doing so. He says that it would result in a lack of experienced politicians because with experience comes skill. And if you're a freshman representative, then you won't be able to get things done and solve the problems that need to be solved. However, this is not the case. Because if the Constitution was amended, the Congress could strive to argue these oppositions, and Congress should strive to do what's best for our country rather than acting like this money is just theirs. Looking at these solutions, you, the Rotary Club, will need to know the advantages and disadvantages if term limits are set. If term limits were denied, then it's obvious what would happen. debt would continue to rise, and you, the Rotary Club, would be unable to say you solved a conflict resolution of this problem. And if it was accepted, then debt would start to decrease. And your Rotary Club can continue to promote the national cooperation, peace, and successful resolution of conflict throughout your life. As stated on your website, that's what you strive to do. Now, that I have given you this argument, all that's left to do is action. So, to do this, you need to support this solution. Write letters to the local media in your community. Tell them your feelings about what you think should be done to these term limits and how you think they should be approached. In order for there to be change, a good constitutional amendment needs to be addressed and acted upon. So, I will leave you with one thing to think about. How many of you in this club want to be left with debt? Probably none of you. So don't burden any more of you in this club or anybody else in the community. Act now, act fast, and set term limits. Thank you. Have a great day.